The welcome screen in AutoCAD Electrical is extremely useful as well. You've got the display at startup tick here. You can tick it or you can untick it. I'm going to leave it ticked because obviously I want it to display at startup. The reason I do that is if you look at the work section here on the left-hand side, you have the new option where you can open up a new AutoCAD electrical drawing. You have the open option where you can open up existing electrical drawings. And you've also got open sample files. The sample files come with AutoCAD Electrical and you can go and open those up and work through them if you wish. The other nice feature, any recent files that I've opened are here. So I've got some recent files showing there on the screen. In the Learn section in the middle, Autodesk provide us now with an overview of AutoCAD Electrical here at the top. And as you can see, that video is 4 minutes, 48 seconds long. So 5 minutes of your time, and you've got an overview of the functionality of AutoCAD Electrical. What's really nice as well is post-training tools such as Essentials videos here. We've got the AutoCAD Electrical interface, working with projects, schematic creation, and so on. I mentioned the Autodesk Exchange App Store. That's in the Extend section on the right here. So you can see I can download at the moment. The featured app there is AutoCAD Tweet, which allows you to tweet from within AutoCAD. You can browse for any app you like. I won't bother clicking on the link because it opens up a web page, but you can browse and go and look for any application you want to look for that might be required for, say, AutoCAD Electrical. You might be designing car parks. You might need to know the turning circles of cars and lorries. I'm sure there's an app in there for that somewhere. Autodesk 360, I mentioned that in the introduction, is a method of storing Autodesk information in the cloud. As it quite rightly says there, store, share, view, and collaborate on design files online. You can access your AutoCAD settings and support files from any computer. And it's not just any computer. If you've got an iPad, you can access your files on your iPad. If you've got an iPhone, you can access your files on your iPhone. It makes you very mobile. It allows you to work on site, for example, edit some details using AutoCAD WS on your iPad. You can then apply those changes to your actual drawing on your PC. Notice as well, social media, you have Facebook, where you can connect with AutoCAD, and also Twitter, where you can connect with AutoCAD as well. So the welcome screen is not just a tool to open up existing drawings. It allows you to go onto the internet. It allows you to access social media. It allows you to access applications, third-party ones that you may require. You can also, as you can see in the middle section here, learn by using the Autodesk videos that are provided. I've got a drawing open in a demonstration project. You can see it over here in the project manager on the left. It's demo project, and the drawing name is Autodesk360.dwg. We're going to have a little look now at Autodesk 360 and how it works and how it's integrated into AutoCAD Electrical. So what we need to do here is we need to look at how AutoCAD Electrical is set up to run with 360 rather than the other way around. Now for this to work, you will need an Autodesk 360 account. If you go to 360.autodesk.com on the internet and set yourself up an Autodesk ID on that page, you can then log into 360 and utilize the space that you're given free of charge on your Autodesk 360 account. Now, I'm already running with Autodesk 360 logged in AutoCAD Electrical. How do I know that? Well, if I go to the top of the screen up here, you can see a little blue head and shoulders. That's my Autodesk 360 sign-in. If I click on the little flyout menu, you can see there that I can sync my settings with the cloud. There's my online options, Autodesk 360, I can sign out, and there's my account details. Now, I don't want to change any of that because I'm signed in. What I do is I go to the Autodesk 360 tab on the ribbon there, and there's all my settings there. There's my design feed. I can collaborate if I want to. That will open up AutoCAD WS, and I can start collaborating in a social style. If we look at Share Document here, you can designate who shares the document on your 360 account by way of putting in an email address, and they then get emailed permissions to your 360 account. The nice thing is I can go straight over here to the left to open folder. And if I click on that now, what it will do is it will open up my 360 folder. Now my 360 folder is actually part of my folder list in Windows now. That's part of the new setup for Autodesk 360. So there's Autodesk 360 there. There's my folder. You can see other folders that I use, things like Dropbox and Microsoft SkyDrive there. But if I just click on Autodesk 360, Windows knows that that's a folder, and there's all my drawings sitting in my cloud-based Autodesk 360 account. Now you'll notice that I've got various drawings that I've worked with in the past. There's things like set and staging for an event company that I've worked with, and so on and so forth. So you can see here that I can set up anything I want at any time, and I can actually save the drawings to the folder if I want to. Now, I'm not going to do it in this particular case, but that's how you would do it. Now, to save that is even easier. I'll just close that now. In fact, I'll minimize it. Best thing to do there, minimize it. You've then got it on your taskbar in Windows if you need to go back. But if I now go to save the drawing, what I can do is I can do a save as here on my quick access toolbar there. And you'll notice there's an Autodesk 360 folder there. It's already there, sitting in your list of locations. So you don't even need to go and find it now. It's already in AutoCAD Electrical. And I can save my drawing there, Autodesk 360 DWG. There's my list of drawings in the cloud. I click on save, and that has now saved that file to the cloud. Now, if I want to save that locally, you'll notice I just go up to save on the quick access toolbar, and that will save it. So I can save it locally on my computer or on my server, or I can save it to the cloud by just going to that Autodesk 360 option. For you to save to the cloud, though, as I stated earlier, you need to be logged in here in AutoCAD Electrical. So you just go there, log in, using the Autodesk ID that you've set up at 360.autodesk.com, and you can then start saving. You can create subfolders, project folders, especially for AutoCAD Electrical. Project folders are very useful. And you can put any information into the cloud to utilize 360 to be a mobile AutoCAD Electrical user. Some of you may not be aware of the ribbon interface in later versions of AutoCAD. What you'll notice at the top of the screen is you now have a ribbon rather than the traditional toolbars like you used to have in the AutoCAD Classic view. So let's have a look now at the ribbon and what it actually does. You'll notice I've got a ribbon interface drawing set up, and that's sitting in our demo project. And what we're going to do is go straight up to the top of the screen, and if I hover over the panels on the ribbon, you can see that they highlight. What you've also got is at the top of the ribbon, you have your tabs. So you'll notice there, project, schematic, panel, and so on. Now they don't have to display as panels. If you go along the ribbon, along the tabs at the top, just here, I can click on the little flyout menu and I can minimize just the tabs, like so. If I click again, I can minimize to panel titles, like so. If I click again, I can minimize to panel buttons, like so. I can also cycle through all of them, and as I click through now, it goes through each one as I click, and then I go back to where I was at the beginning, the default setting. So I can go back to the Home tab now, and you see I get all of my home panels like Draw, Modify, Layers. If I go to the Project tab, I get panels such as Project Tools and Other Tools. Now you'll notice when I hover over a panel, it highlights only when there's a flyout menu. Can you see that there? Project Tools does not have a flyout menu. Other Tools has a little triangle. Click there, and there's other commands. You can pin those open using the pin like that, and they stay open. If I unpin, as soon as I move away, they fly back into the ribbon itself. Let's go back to the Home tab on the ribbon. The reason I say that is the panels are slightly smaller and a little bit more easier to manage for the next thing I'm going to show you. The ribbon itself is made up of these panels which, as you can see, have the regular icons like line, polyline, and so on. Hover over any icon, you get a flyout menu on what that command actually does. As you move away, the flyout menu disappears. What would it be like, though, if I could actually bring one of those panels into the drawing area? Now, because of the resolution I'm using to record the video here, I don't have a lot of screen real estate. But let's say I had a super duper dual screen 27-inch screens set up on my desk. What I could do is have my panels in different places on those screens. It's very easy to do. click and hold on the panel title bar and drag. And you'll see now that my draw panel, when I release it, is now in my drawing area. If I hover over the title bar now, I get these little icons appear here. So I can return the panel to the ribbon, or I can actually toggle the orientation so that the flyout comes out at the bottom, or if I move away, that'll go back in now. If I toggle the orientation again, the flyout comes out to the side. Very, very useful if you've got lots of screen real estate and you want to keep that draw panel open to draw some objects on your drawing. What happens though if I go to a different tab on the ribbon and I want to return my draw panel to the ribbon? Click on the icon there on the sidebar, return panel to ribbon. It doesn't appear on the project tab, but if I go back to the home tab now, you'll see that draw is back on the left-hand end of the home tab on the ribbon interface. So you can see that this ribbon interface is very, very useful. You can customize it. You can move the panels around if you want to. The good thing is it's now all at the top of the screen. And the flyouts allow you to access other parts of the panel. You can pin those open like that. So my modify commands are now pinned open for as long as I want them to be. I can then click on that pin again and it flies back into the ribbon again. It's a very, very useful tool. The ribbon is excellent because the flyouts just pop out. So if I go here to layer states, they just appear. I don't have to worry about a dialog box and closing a dialog box anymore. If I click away from that flyout, it goes back into the ribbon again. Very, very useful, very, very easy to use. For those of you that haven't used it before though, just take care, be measured, and look for the things that you need because they might be in a slightly different place to what you're used to if you've been using the AutoCAD Classic interface with the original toolbars. For those of you used to the older versions of AutoCAD where the command line is actually locked to the bottom of the AutoCAD screen, you'll see the command line down here at the bottom of the screen now is movable. Click on the little grey area there on the left and drag, and you'll see the screen update. So as I move now, I can park the screen wherever I want to. You'll notice as well it is transparent. You can set these transparency settings in here where you customize it. So you've got input settings, so you've got autocomplete, autocorrect, search, midstring, and so on. These settings are very different to the older command line that we used to have. Lines of prompt history, if I click on that, I can change the amount and notice it comes up on the command line, which is very clever. I'll leave that at 3 and just press enter there. I'll click on the little spanner again now. Input search options. If I click on that, I can go in and set all of my search options for the command line. I've got autocorrect on and off, remember corrections, list delay time, 300 milliseconds, everything. I can set everything I want alphabetically, frequency. It's quite an incredible setup now, and it's been thought about in depth by Autodesk to make the command line a very valid tool while you're using AutoCAD. You would have thought by now with things like touch screens, iPads, tablets, and so on, we wouldn't need something like the command line where we actually have to put text and numerical input in. We still have to use it though. When we're using certain commands in AutoCAD, we still have to type variables. We still have to type numbers of objects, for example. So that is how you set your search options. I'll just click on cancel there so I don't change any settings. I'll go back to the little spanner again now. Transparency, if I click here, my transparency options. So at the moment, how transparent should the command line be? I've got 70% opacity, which is the default setting. So basically that's taken me from 100% opacity, which is solid, towards the clear setting here. So I'm 30% transparent, which is more than adequate most of the time. How transparent should the command line be on mouse over? Now what happens here is you can set it that when you roll your mouse over the command line, it will be, in my case, solid, because the slider bar, as you can see, is right at the end. To move the slider, just click and drag, and I always leave that at 100% opacity, and I'm going to OK that and show you why. Because then, when I hover over the command line like that, you can see that it goes solid, so that I can click there and perhaps type in something like the line command and press enter. And as soon as I do that, it'll obviously kick in with the line command and ask me to specify the first point like so. I'll just hit escape there to cancel that. Those settings are just on that little spanner icon there, so I can go in and set all those settings. Again, just to lose that menu, just hit escape on the keyboard and it goes. Now, docking it is just as easy as undocking it. I click on the little grey sort of speckled area there and drag, and as I come down, you'll see it lock on there. That locks it to the status bar at the bottom of the screen. If I click and drag a bit further though, you'll see the ghost image appear when I come down towards the bottom of the screen. There it is there. If I get it there and release, it just automatically docks it at the bottom of the screen to fit the bottom of the drawing area. So you can see there that the command line is extremely useful now. It used to just be this line of text locked at the bottom of the AutoCAD screen. It's now much more sophisticated. Something else you can do as well. Let me just go to the line command. If I click here and come into the drawing area, it asks me to specify the first point of my line. So if I click here now, like so, and drag my line across, you'll notice when I click, I'm getting the commands on the command line there. So I've drawn my first line segment. But now I can come down to the line command itself here on the command line. If I click on undo there, the undo actually works. So I can actually click on the sub-option settings in the command on the command line. That's been a new feature in the last few versions of AutoCAD. It's extremely useful, saves you having to right-click to go to the shortcut menu, saves you having to type, in this case, U for undo, and press enter. I'll just press escape there to cancel the line command. So the command line, again, a very useful piece of kit in your AutoCAD toolbox. So let's now look at the status bar in AutoCAD. Again, I've set up a drawing in our demo project, statusbar.dwg. So when you're looking at the work files for this particular video title, you look for the status bar drawing, and that'll be located in demo project. So let's have a look now at the status bar. Where is it on the AutoCAD screen? It's down at the bottom of the screen. Now, as you're working in the drawing area, if I move the crosshair or the cursor around, you can see it moving on the screen there. Notice the coordinate readout bottom left corner of the screen. That is part of your status bar, and it tells you the X and Y coordinates of the location of the cursor. Now, if we were working in 3D, creating a 3D structure or a 3D object, those coordinates are much more important. In AutoCAD Electrical, we're going to be creating 2D schematics of components, panels, and so on. So we won't really need to worry too much about our coordinate readouts. However, sometimes they may come into play to locate a certain circuit board, a certain master switch board, or a junction box, for example. It depends on the environment in which you're working. Moving along the status bar now to the right, you'll notice all of these icons along the bottom here. Now these icons are your drafting settings, and they're one of the most fundamental tools within all versions of AutoCAD. They allow you to switch things on and off at any time. So I can be drawing away in my drawing here. I might zoom in on a certain area like so, and I might want to draw some lines. Now I want the lines to snap exactly, say, from that corner there to that corner there. So I have to make sure that my object snaps are switched on. So I come down here like this, there's object snaps. I don't want 3D object snaps, it's that one there. Now you'll notice how these icons are very similar to each other. There's another setting for these drafting settings that I'll show you in a moment that will make your life a lot easier. I'll switch object snap on. There's my drafting settings. It prompts me which object snaps do I want to switch on. So I'll switch on endpoint, midpoint, and center, and also intersection and extension. Now I will cover these object snaps in more detail later on in the course, so don't worry too much about them right now. Endpoint is the one I actually need, but I'll OK those that I've switched on. Up to the draw panel here, on the ribbon, I click on the line command. Now when I hover, there's my endpoint snap. So I'm snapping exactly to those corners, and then I press enter to confirm the line command like so. Job done. Now I've drawn that line exactly. What would happen if I tried to do that without the object snaps on? So let's come down here, switch object snaps off, and try and draw that line again. I'll go on the other side, and I'll try and draw from there to there, and I'll press enter. Now if I zoom in real close, that line doesn't touch that corner, And if I pan and zoom in there, that line doesn't touch that corner. So I'm completely inaccurate. So that line is useless. So I'll select it, hit the delete key, and I'll delete it. But you see what I mean? Those object snaps are extremely important. They're fundamental for the accuracy of your drawings. Let's lose that line there as well. That can go. I'll just delete that one too. And I'll zoom out again, and I'm back in my panel drawing like so. So those settings for the drafting settings are great, but when you look at those icons, if you're a new user especially, you don't quite know what they mean. So if you move over any of the buttons, the icon buttons, and right-click, a shortcut menu appears. Now, I've right-clicked over the object snaps, so there's all my object snaps there. I can switch them on and off there as well. But if I just click on this Use Icon setting, it turns all of the icon buttons into buttons with letters on. Now, this is the old classic setting, and I actually prefer this both as an instructor and as a user because it tells me exactly what those buttons do. O-snap is object snaps. It's easy. And when I switch it on, you can see there on the command line, it tells me that O-snap is on. If I click on it again, it tells me that O-snap is off. So those are your drafting settings, and we will cover those in a little bit more detail later on. Let's move along now. Notice we have a model button, and we also have here our model button again. Now this model button here switches us between model space or what is known as paper space, the layout tabs. So if I click on model, you'll notice the environment changes. It takes me into the AutoCAD layout space, which is where I would normally plot my drawings. If I click on the paper button again, you'll notice it takes me into the model space, but looking through what they call a viewport. How do I get back out of this layout space? Well, I move outside the viewport and just double click to deactivate that first. I don't want that activated. What I can do is I can come down here. If I click on this button here, it takes me back to the model, like so. That's my model button. And here I've got my layout button. Takes me back to the layout again. So there's model and there's layout. Now you can also switch on little tabs that appear here. But also there's a new feature now in newer versions of AutoCAD. The drawing tab is up here. If I hover over it, you can see there's layout and model there as well. Just go slightly off the screen there due to my screen resolution, but don't worry. I can just hover over model there and click, takes me into the model space. If I hover over the status bar again, hover over the layout and click, takes me into the layout space. The nice thing about that is if I hover over that tab, model is always there and any layouts that I've got set up are always there. Very useful to move around in the drawing. I've also got down here on the status bar, quick view layouts, which is somewhat similar. There's my model, there's my layout, and I can close it there. If I've got multiple drawings, hover there. I've got one drawing open called status bar, hover there, there's the model, there's the layout. Again, I can close that by clicking on the cross there. There are some other settings moving along here which involve annotative scaling and also workspaces. We'll look at these in more detail as we work through the course. When working with AutoCAD and any other flavour of AutoCAD, in this case AutoCAD Electrical, you need to be aware of your DWG file types. AutoCAD saves as a native DWG file, in the same way that Word saves as a DOC or a DOCX file. So you need to be careful which version of the DWG file you are saving and ultimately maybe sending to your client, to your contractor, and so on. You need to be careful of this because different versions of AutoCAD use different DWG file types. In the version of AutoCAD that we're using, if I do a save as, you'll see that we're using a 2013 DWG file type. So I'll go up to save as, and you'll see down here, files of type, there's my AutoCAD 2013 drawing DWG file type. I can save to lots of different DWG file types, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this dialog up the screen. You'll see why in a moment, because when I click on files of type here, you can see that there's lots of different file types. I can save all the way back to AutoCAD Release 14 if I want to. Now what you'll find most of the time, the only distance you'll have to go back is to there, to 2010, maybe 2007. It depends on what version of the software your client, your contractor is using. To be on the safe side though, what I tend to do is set my DWG file type to the previous type each time I work. So in this case, instead of saving to 2013, what I might do is tell AutoCAD Electrical by default to always save to 2010. So how do you do that? Well, let's get out of this dialog box and cancel this first of all. What we need to do is just put our crosshair in the center of the screen, right click on the mouse and go to the options setting here on the shortcut menu. When you click on options, you get a rather large dialog box appear. Don't worry, don't be intimidated by it. It's just all of your AutoCAD settings. If we go to the open and save tab, there's the file save option on the left. Change that to 2010, like so. Click on apply. Click on OK, and now every time I do a save as, so I click on save as again now, you'll see it's a 2010 instead. What that means is you're saving back to the previous DWG file type. That's important because someone might have a version of the software that cannot read the 2013 DWG file type. It might be an older version. The good thing about 2013, for example, is it will read all the older ones below it. But if you go the other way, older versions of AutoCAD can't read newer DWG file types. So get into that habit of maybe setting it back one step. So I've gone back to the 2010 file type, even though my default is a 2013 DWG file type. As usual, I've placed the next drawing that we're going to use in the demo project. It's called Using the Mouse. Using a mouse is pretty fundamental to most products nowadays that are based on either a PC or a Mac. And you'll use a mouse to generate objects, documents, drawings. All depends on what piece of software you're using. However, using the mouse in AutoCAD is quite different sometimes. There are tools on the mouse that you might not be aware are actually available to you. For example, if I roll up and down on the wheel on a mouse, I can zoom in if I roll the wheel up. I can zoom out if I roll the wheel down. If I place the crosshair in a certain area of the drawing and roll up, I zoom in using that crosshair as the center of the zoom. If I roll back, the crosshair is the center of the zoom out as well. Now, let's say I zoom in way too far, so I go in way too far like that. Can't see where I am on the drawing, don't know which drawing I'm in even. If I double click on the wheel and use it as a button, it does what is called a zoom extent and zooms to the extent of the visible drawn objects on the drawing. Very useful if you get lost, if you zoom in too far or you zoom out too far. Now there's one more tool that's very, very useful on that wheel. If I move the crosshair somewhere, let's say I zoom in here, and you can see there's a wiring block there. You can see the screws where the connections screw in. Now, I might want to pan to another part of the drawing quickly. I hold down the wheel, little hand appears, can you see it there? And I move the mouse, and as long as I've got that wheel held down, I can pan across to another part of the drawing. I can then zoom out and look at that part of the drawing. I can then double click on the wheel to zoom extents again. So you can see how quick and easy it is to navigate using your mouse in AutoCAD and AutoCAD Electrical in this case. Also as well, your left-hand mouse button tends to be your select tool. So if I hover over, let's say, that line there, you can see it highlight. AutoCAD has a default highlight setting, so if I click now using the left-hand mouse button, you'll see it actually selects that line that forms part of that panel layout. If I hold down the Shift key on the keyboard and then left click again on that line, it deselects it. Just a click on an object will select it, holding down Shift and a left-hand click will deselect it. Now, the right-hand mouse button is very important. If I don't select any objects or a command and I right-click, you'll see there is the default right-hand mouse button context-sensitive shortcut menu, or the shortcut menu for short, for obvious reasons. And you'll notice I can repeat previous commands there, just by hovering there. I can go to the clipboard, cut, copy and paste. I can isolate objects and hide objects and end the object isolation. We'll look at that later. I can undo a pan and a zoom. I've got pan, zoom, I've got steering wheels, which we don't really need to touch on in this particular case. We're only working in a 2D environment. Steering wheels tend to be more adaptive to a 3D environment. Action recorder, we can record our movements as small macros if we want to. We've got selection, so we can select an edge, a face, but again, that's more 3D orientated. I've got quick select, where I can quick select a global group of objects. I've got quick calc, find, and options that we looked at earlier when we were setting the open and save. I'll just hit escape there to lose that shortcut menu. Now that shortcut menu is also context sensitive. So if I go up here to the ribbon and click on the line command, and I select, let's say, this corner here. Now my object snaps aren't on, so I go down here, snap on, select that endpoint there and come down to that endpoint there and click again. So I've drawn that line, AutoCAD's waiting for me to draw another one. I can right click and I can undo that last segment. So it's context sensitive to the line command itself. I'll just hit escape there to cancel the line command. So you can see all of those tools there on the mouse give you that heads up display that you can see on the screen at all times. Very, very useful. Left hand mouse button, right hand mouse button, and obviously the wheel, and using the wheel as a button on the mouse can make your life much, much more efficient when using AutoCAD Electrical. I previously mentioned model and layout tabs when we were looking at the status bar. Now, down on the status bar at the bottom of the screen, you've got the model button that I mentioned, but here you've got the model tab button, and you've also got the layout button, which takes us into that other view, as we discussed previously. So if I click on this button here, that goes back to model. Now, there is another way of displaying model and layout in AutoCAD. Some people use it, some people don't. If you right-click on this model button here, you can display the layout and model tabs. If I click on that now, you'll see now that we have some tabs here at the bottom of the drawing area. They do the same thing. If I click on layout there, if I click on model there, you can see I can toggle between the two. The nice thing about these tabs though is if I right-click on them, they have a shortcut menu. I can hide them again. As you can see, if I click hide layout and model tabs, they go again. I have to go and click here on the model button and display the layout and model tabs again. But if I right click on the layout 1 tab, for example, I can go into things like drafting standard setup. I can activate a previous layout. I can move or copy. I can rename and so on. If I actually make that layout 1 current, I'll just hit escape there to lose the right hand menu and click on layout 1 tab. If I right click on it now and go into Page Setup Manager, I can actually start setting up page setups for those particular layout tabs. I'll just close that because we're not going to do that right now. If I right click on the Model tab, notice I've got the same options, but the Model tab has to be current. Right click, and I can set a page setup for the Model tab as well if I wish. Sometimes you do that for the Model tab, sometimes you don't. Normally what you would do is plot from the layout tab. So you make your layout current, right click and go to plot here. That opens up the plot dialog box, and then using a page setup here that you've set up, which we haven't done so yet, you would then plot your drawing. You can obviously use these tabs if you want to. I personally, as an instructor and a user, prefer them. I like to have them there so that I can see what I'm doing, plus I can use the right-hand shortcut menu to work with them whenever I want to. It's entirely up to you, but for the purposes of this course, they will be switched on. When you first start using AutoCAD Electrical, your screen will look like this, apart from the fact that we have the demo project set up for this particular section on the training course. We'll come back to that later. You'll notice I've been using Save As a lot in this particular section as well. Save As is not a default setting in AutoCAD Electrical. You can see there it is, up on the Quick Access toolbar, Save As. If you click on this little flyout here, you'll see that Save As has a tick next to it. All you've got to do is select Save As in that menu, and you'll see the tick appear. The tick indicates that Save As is displayed on the Quick Access toolbar. So when I click on Save As, it gives me the option to save the drawing as and save it in a folder somewhere. I'll just cancel that now. Let's look now at AutoCAD DWT files. Now, a DWT is a template file that you open up a DWG from, even if it is a blank template. So let's try that now. I'm going to go up to the new icon here on the quick access toolbar. When I click on new, it takes me to the default template folder that's set up when AutoCAD Electrical is installed. And you can see there's all these DWT files represented by these little red icons here. However, how do you know which DWT to use? Look at this big long list. All different standards, different countries, different sheet sizes. Which one do I use? Some of them are more explanatory than others. For example, AutoCAD Electrical, AutoCAD Electrical IEC. IEC is the European metric standard for electrical, so we wouldn't use that one. AutoCAD Electrical without the IEC is in inches. It's just a default AutoCAD Electrical template. AutoCAD.DWT is just a blank imperial drawing. AutoCAD ISO.DWT is a blank metric drawing. Some of them are a bit more descriptive. If I come down the list, ANSI, American National Standards Institute, and the A, Bs and Cs are sheet sizes. If I come down to DIN standards, A0, A1 are sheet sizes, and DIN is a European metric standard. But if you didn't know that, and I wasn't telling you that, how would you know which one to use? Sometimes you have to look them up. Sometimes, though, you get descriptions inside the DWT file. However, in this particular dialog box, they're not displayed. So how do we get these descriptions to display? What we do is we switch on the AutoCAD startup variable. So I'm actually going to go and use the AutoCAD DWT there. I'm not going to use the electrical one. I'm just going to go for a blank imperial drawing. Click on open. That opens up a blank new drawing. You saw it flicker slightly there. It's opening up a new DWG, which AutoCAD sequentially is called Drawing 8 DWG. Now, take the crosshair to the center of the screen and just type the word startup, all one word. Because we have dynamic input switched on, as you can see, it all comes up next to the crosshair there. Select startup on the menu that appears. We'll look at dynamic input later on in the course, and you now get a prompt that will follow you around with the crosshair. In the input box, type 1 and press enter. Now, in AutoCAD Electrical, we have just flicked a switch, if you'll pardon the pun. We've actually switched on the startup dialog box. So what we'll do in the next video is we'll have a look at how that startup dialog box works. At the moment though, we've got it all switched on and we're ready to go. In the last video, what we'd done is we'd set up the startup variable, we'd switched it on, and we'd set it to 1, which means that the dialog box is now on. So how do we get that dialog box? Well, we go back up to the quick access toolbar and click on new. Now we get a dialog box that is very different. Now we've got a grayed out icon here on the left, open a drawing. We haven't actually opened and saved any drawings really yet, so we won't be able to display any drawings there, so that's why it's grayed out. The next one along though is very easy to understand. Start from scratch. You have imperial, feet and inches, and metric. These are those two templates that I pointed out. Imperial is AutoCAD.DWT, default blank imperial drawing. Metric is AutoCAD ISO.DWT, which is a default blank metric drawing. Moving along to the next icon, use a template. There's that list of templates that we had in the dialog box before we switched on the startup variable. Now some of these have got a description. So AutoCAD DWT that I used is a normal English feet and inches drawing template. If I come down that list a bit, there's AutoCAD ISO, which is a normal international metric drawing template. Now the electrical ones, strangely enough, don't have a description. That's because it's in the title. AutoCAD Electrical IEC means that it's an AutoCAD Electrical IEC, which is metric European. So that's a metric template. AutoCAD Electrical DWT without the IEC or without the ISO is an imperial inches default electrical template. If I come down that list, you'll see that you've got things like DIN A1. That's a European metric standard with an A1 sheet size. Come up a bit, we've got some ANSI ones here. American National Standards Institute, and A portrait is the sheet size and the orientation. If I select that though, no description because it's all in the title. I can also browse, and that takes me straight back to that template folder that we looked at earlier. I'll just cancel that there. We can also, if we want to create and use our own settings instead of using ones from a template, we can use advanced setup or quick setup. We don't really need to do that. We've got this great big list here of templates that we can use in all of our AutoCAD electrical projects. So let's set up a new electrical drawing. I'm going to go up here and use AutoCAD Electrical.dwt. Click on OK. That gives me a nice blank drawing, all set up to inches because I selected AutoCAD Electrical and not the IEC one. What I'll do now is go up to Save As, and I'm going to save that as Startup Variable. So I'm going to put that in capital to show it's a variable like that, and then I'll type that in there, Startup Variable. Notice it's defaulted to that 2010 drawing that we set up in the settings in the options earlier. I'll click on Save there. That's now saved. You can see the path. Now, if you've got a big long path like that, just click on Save here, not Save As, and then all it does is show the file name. Just a little bit easier when you're trying to work out what your file's called. And then what we'll do, we'll go to Demo Project, right-click, Add Active Drawing, apply the project default values like so. Takes a few seconds, and there it is there. The nice thing is now it's in the project, I can use these arrows here to toggle between drawings in the project. So that's my model and layout tabs. If I go back to using the mouse now, and you'll see they update as I go through. I can go back now, just by clicking on the arrows, I can toggle between the drawings in the project, which is a really nice way of moving around. So what we've done there is we've looked at Save As and how to get it on the Quick Access toolbar. We've set the startup variable so that when we click on New, we get our startup dialog box. And what we've also done is learn how to save an active drawing to our demo project. We'll go into projects and obviously electrical drawings in a lot more detail as we work throughout the course.